What's up, everybody? Candy Girl here, and I am going to break down and give you my 2 cents on how the Flint water crisis is just another example of environmental racism. The simple fact is that Steve Harvey is black, and he did not, in that situation, demonstrate him standing in solidarity with other blacks and ethnic minorities who are being disproportionately affected every day through environmental racism. So, in this video, I'm going to talk about what is environmental racism, what is this concept, and how does it disproportionately affect ethnic minorities more than whites, even if they're living in the same community that is plagued with the same public health issue. Also, I will be drawing that connection with the Flint water crisis and how all of this is perpetuating a system of white supremacy. Now, before I get into all of that, however, let me just say thank you to all of my new subscribers. I really appreciate you showing an interest in this topic matter and in my channel in general. So thank you and welcome to this channel. All of my first time viewers, please be sure to subscribe. And just to everybody out there, please like and leave your comments on this video. But please remember that when it comes to sensitive topics such as race and class and justice and things like that, this can be a touchy issue, and I don't mind having a dialogue and having people who disagree with me, but you have to remember that we are a United States of America, and we all live in one race, which is the human race. So if you have any compassion for anyone else, you would come at this issue with respect. If you cannot do that, you will be blocked. I don't even have to read the entire comment. If I feel like you're coming in the wrong way, you're done. I don't even have to allow that negative energy into my space and onto my viewers and my supporters who are just trying to have a healthy discussion. And that goes both ways on the sides of the discussion. We're not going to go back and forth and insult one another. Okay, so what is environmental racism? Environmental racism, and this is in my own words, is a system of indifference and or bias regarding the environmental health of ethnic minorities and households of low social and economic status. These people use their decision-making authority, and it is being made to use these people's decision-making authority is being used to the detriment of ethnic minorities. And that is the difference in between bigotry or prejudice and racism. Racism is all about the utilization of power over another person to their detriment on the basis of their race. Okay, so let's give you some examples of environmental racism. If you notice, your freeways and your highways are usually cutting through low-income communities with a high concentration of poverty. You'll see freeways, truck routes, railroads going through low-income communities. You'll see a lot of the factories with that high production of toxic matter in those communities. And those things are an environmental hazard because when you have higher concentrations of particulate matter in the air, people who are just living and working there are being exposed to those toxic materials, which has an adverse impact on their health. Now, not only does it have an effect on their health and their life expectancy, but it also has an overall effect on the social economic status of that person. I'm going to take a sidebar and explain to you the correlation between environmental health hazards and socioeconomic status. When there are environmental health hazards that are leading to chronic health illnesses, the three factors to socioeconomic status are affected. The first factor being the person's income. When you are suffering from a chronic illness tied to or correlated to an environmental health hazard in your community, you're taking time off of work to seek medical care and to recover and to basically nurse yourself to health as a result of those chronic health issues. With taking time off of work, if you are an hourly employee, which is usually the case with people who have a bachelor's degree or lower, or some type of unskilled laborer in a factory or some sort, you're working on an hourly basis, so those are less hours that you're being able to earn income. Also, with your children missing time out of school due to their chronic illnesses, you had to take time off of work in order to care for that child, or they have to take money out of their expendable income, which is oftentimes inexpendable, in order to pay for healthcare services as well as childcare if you want to actually be able to still go to work while your child is ill. Also, the second factor to social economic status is your education. So, with chronic health issues as a result of environmental hazards, a person is not able to go to school as much because they're sick. Just like with the income and people's jobs, people who are going to school on any level miss days of school, which affect their educational performance, which then affects their educational attainment. And we all know that your educational attainment is therefore going to affect the third factor to social economic status, which is occupational attainment. So when you're not getting as good of grades, then you're going to turn around and not be able to attain the level of higher education that you would have liked to, or go to a more prestigious institution because of the fact that you weren't able to earn the grades to actually gain admission to that university on a scholarship, because more than likely you're living in a high concentrated area of poverty. You're probably impoverished too. So then, without that nice Ivy League degree, or even just a bachelor's degree period, you're not able to get the kind of jobs that are going to pay you enough to increase your social economic status and to change the environment in which you live in generation to generation. So that is the correlation between environmental health hazards, chronic health issues, and therefore your social economic status. It begs the question, why are you having so many environmental hazards in one area where there's a high concentration of poverty? It's because of an indifference and a bias against their health. They're not spreading these things out, or placing restrictions on the businesses and the different facilities that are in that area because of the indifference. So you'll very seldomly see, and I'm talking in relation to one another, you'll very seldomly see the same level of environmental hazards in a highly affluent and predominantly white community. And you can just do that by reasonable observation, okay? Now, do environmental hazards in low-income areas affect blacks and whites the same way? Because we all know that there are actually more whites on welfare than there are blacks. So it would stand to reason that there are more whites who are in poverty than blacks. However, when you look at the amount of people within a race, or the proportion of people within a race, blacks are being more adversely affected by poverty. So in other words, out of all of the blacks in the nation, there is a high proportion or a high amount of those people who are living in poverty. Compare that to whites. Out of all of the whites, there is a lower proportion of whites who are low income or living in poverty. Okay, so just to give you the raw numbers, I'm going to pull out a study from the University of Michigan. Go Blue. That's my alma mater. Number one public university in the nation. So this is a very trusted source. Number one school of public policy. And this is where this study is coming from. 26.2% of blacks and 23.6% of Hispanics are living in poverty. Now compare that to whites. Only 10.1% of non-Hispanic whites and 12% of Asians are living in poverty. According to a study which was publicized by the Washington Post, Poor blacks are more likely to live in communities of high concentrations of poverty than whites. And as we discussed before, the areas where there's high concentrations of poverty are where those environmental hazards exist. So blacks are disproportionately being subjected and exposed to environmental hazards because those are the people who are living in highly concentrated areas of poverty where the environmental hazards exist. So this is talking about the spatial organization of poverty. And so in Chicago, we've got 1/3 of African Americans who are living in high poverty census tracts. And that is actually 10 times higher than that for whites. Also in St. Louis, there are 29.5% of African Americans versus 1.6% of whites. In Detroit, 47% of poor African Americans are living in highly concentrated areas of poverty. In Flint, as far as the demographics are concerned, it is 61% ethnic minorities and only 39% whites. Okay, Rick Schneider, in this community that is majority black, Rick Schneider, the governor of Michigan, had a very blatant disregard, indifference, and bias against rectifying the issues that are affecting so many people's health in Flint, again, which is 61% ethnic minority. Now, citizens began complaining about this issue in October 2014, and to this very day, the issue has not been resolved, and there have been 10 deaths as a result of that. Both blacks and whites would arguably be treated or being affected similarly by the Flint water crisis because, of course, although it's 61% ethnic minorities, it's still 39% white, which is a whole lot of whites, correct? That is not true, okay? And walk with me on this one. Blacks have a lower life expectancy than whites across the board, and this is just the overall trend as far as life expectancy is concerned when income is held constant. So that means that a black and a white of the same income will have different life expectancies. The black person with the same income will have a lower life expectancy than the white. Blacks have lower access to health care and quality health care and non-prejudicial health care. You'll see that the decision making that goes on from health providers onto their patients, it is a big discrepancy between how they treat their black patients versus their white patients. So although they might be experiencing the same environmental hazards, it is still affecting them differently because blacks don't have as much access to the health care to rectify the issues, nor do they have the same quality of care. There has to be some extra factors that are placing blacks at a greater disadvantage under the same set of circumstances. Now, how does all of this advance the agenda of white supremacy? Even if you don't have an explicit agenda of white supremacy, you still have, again, that indifference and bias that is favoring whites over blacks. So when we have legally permissible actions that are disproportionately affecting blacks, and there's a big indifference to that, we've got to ask the question, does this have anything to do with you wanting to be on top in the end of the day at other people's detriment? You know, we live in a capitalistic society. This is the only way that capitalism even exists, because there has to be somebody on the lower end of the totem pole, and it happens to be here, aggregated socially by race. So that's my 2 cents on the Flint water crisis and environmental racism. I hope this is of some assistance to you in understanding what environmental racism is, how that ties into the Flint water crisis, and how that affects white supremacy and the oppression of blacks, ethnic minorities, and those of low socioeconomic status. Y'all, please leave your comments, your thoughts, your commentary, whatever, in the comment box. But again, remember to be respectful, as I will do the same onto you, or else you will be blocked. Again, please be sure to subscribe, and thank you so very much for watching. Until next time, love and blessings.